Tree People presentation a few months ago. Craig Lapsley is from Australia. Australia has very, very similar fire conditions that we have, although they're on the other side of the world. So when water goes down the drain, it spins the other way, and then they have fires at the opposite time of the year, right? Because they're in the southern hemisphere. Other than that, it's pretty similar. They have very similar issues. So, like I said, I'm not here to make excuses, make light of what went on, because things could have gone better. But in reality, we have a very robust and world-class mutual aid system here in the state of California. We have the ability to get resources here. I say quick, but it takes a long time to drive a fire truck from San Francisco here, right? It takes time. And when you have a fire like this, even though LA County Fire Department has 170 plus fire stations, when a fire breaks out in Topanga or Malibu or Calabasas, they can't send all 170 fire engines there because there's still going to be accidents happening in Altadena and medical incidents in Carson, and right, they have to maintain some kind of coverage. It's going to be reduced. They do that. I think they can get maybe 60 of their fire engines engaged, but those other 100 and some have to stay in place because they have responsibility for that whole county. I can tell you that there are what I would call a handshake agreement, where Chief Osby from LA County can call the fire chief of Ventura County and he'll send them 10 engines immediately. He can do the same with the fire chief from LA City Fire Department, and they kind of have a reciprocal agreement all ways. Because when the actual mutual aid system does kick into place, it's formal. I hate to say it, firefighting's a business too. When people are going to help and things are happening and wheels are turning and fuel's getting consumed, people want to know where the money is going and how to pay it back and how they're going to get their money back. So it takes a little while, but we can get help here pretty quick. So in spite of the best efforts of the LA County Fire Department, in spite of the best efforts of our world-class mutual aid system, we had a very, very dynamic incident with those Santa Ana winds blowing. We had multiple cities involved, okay, burning houses in the middle of Thousand Oaks, in the middle of Oak Park, in the middle of Agoura Hills, in the middle of town. You know, that's kind of been unheard of to us until the last few years. So there is some responsibility on ourselves too to prepare our houses and to prepare ourselves, because in reality, those fire trucks may not get there fast enough, and even if they all do, there's not enough to come cover every house. When I would take a strike team out, we would get an area of maybe a whole neighborhood. I'd be there with my 5 engines, and they'd say, okay, this is yours to protect. This whole neighborhood, maybe 200 homes, maybe 100 homes, that was ours with 5 fire engines. So you have to kind of go through and triage, if you've heard that term, you kind of triage them, and you go, you know, okay, these 10 houses, they're going to be fine, you know, this one's going to need some work, and you kind of spread your equipment out, and each engine might have to handle, you know, 5 houses, you know, each of the ones that are going to really need help. So the more you can prepare your house and have it ready to go, the better that it's going to be for the firefighters that get there. So that's kind of where the shared responsibility, shared obligation comes from, because we're all in it. We're all in it together. No one entity is going to take care of it for us. Right? We all have to work together. Is that my 30 minutes? Yeah.
Oh, you got some extra time.
Okay. Okay, I got to refer to some notes on here a little bit. So, wildfires are not new to Malibu. Here's just a little pictograph history from 1928 to 2018. So a little bit of history here on Malibu. Way back when it was Rancho Topanga, Malibu, Sequoia. It was about 13,000 acres. A gentleman in 1891 named Frederick Hastings Ridge from Boston bought this 13,000 acre ranch and actually even grew it up to 17,000 acres. Can you imagine owning all this and all the coast and everything? That's amazing. So in 1903, a wildfire started in Calabasas. It burned down his beloved ranch house. He was heartbroken, had to move back to LA, and he passed away in 1905. So for years after that, his wife was jealously trying to hold on to this property and hold it for themselves, and she couldn't do it. Finally, a road punches in. With the road coming in, property got sold and homes were built on the beach. So in 1928, first road, property sold, house is built. 1929, fire comes in and burns 13 of them down. So that's kind of where our history goes, right? So that's kind of how it starts. So it's not a new problem. So here's a couple of them that are of some significance. I kind of look at this as what I call recent history. I can remember back to the 1970. 1970 is really significant for the fire service. It's what they call the year the world burned. when I was a new firefighter in Kern County in Bakersfield, I had a captain that had come over here to Southern California to help with fires, and he said from Bakersfield you could look south and you could see a glow all across the mountains. So in 1970, the year the world burned, between September 22nd and October 4th, there was 773 separate fires that consumed 576,000 acres.
Over which area?
All of Southern California.
Oh, all of Southern,
Yeah.
okay.
773 fires, 576,000 acres, burned up 722 homes, and killed 16 people. And you can see 10 of them were right here in Malibu. Okay, so this was one of the 773 fires that occurred. So it got hit pretty hard. So one thing that came out in 1970 in the world, the year the world burned. Hi.
Sorry to be so rude,
That's okay.
my dog got hurt.
So what they found was even though help was coming from all over the state, they were having problems communicating with each other. They had problems with terminology and things that were going on. What a metropolitan fire department like Los Angeles City calls a fire engine is a big pumper with 500 or 1,000 gallons of water and 4 people on it. If you ask for an engine from Shingleton Springs up by Sacramento, it might be 2 people in a pickup truck with a water tank in the back, right? So they had all kinds of problems. They didn't have common communication. So out of this whole mess, a group was started called FireScope that still exists today. So FireScope came up with common communications, common terminology. So if you
Fire
ask
what?
FireScope,
Stope?
scope,
Oh, scope,
yep,
fire scope.
Periscope,
Okay.
and that's an acronym. You gotta have acronyms in every business, I
Yeah.
think. Yep. FireScope originally meant Firefighting Resources of Southern California, organized for potential emergencies. So that's how it started. LA County was a charter organization, Ventura County, Santa Barbara. So they were so successful, they developed a thing called the Incident Command System, ICS they call it, and a thing called Multi-Agency Coordination System, MAX. And those are now used nationwide, if not worldwide, that all developed as a result of these fires here in 1970. So talk about lessons learned and making something, work. And so it's been highly successful. The acronym does not include Southern California anymore because it's kind of a more global thing and they didn't want to, but it still has the acronym FireScope. So 1970, we talked about that. So that was that one. So that's pretty significant, 1970. So then the Canaan Fire, 1978, you see it pretty much followed Canaan Road, would be that on the right side there. Another 162 structures, 25,000 acres. Dayton Canyon Fire, 120 structures destroyed, 43,000 acres burned. I'm going to do a little comparison here in a minute. This one really kind of stuck out with me, and I'll show you why here in a minute. Old Topanga Fire.
Oh, that was mine.
Old Topanga Fire, I was here in 1993 for the Old Topanga Fire. 3 fatalities on that one, 359 structures destroyed, 16,000 acres burned. Here's the infamous Woolsey Fire,
Wow.
right? 3 fatalities, 16,000 structures destroyed, 96,000 acres.
Wow.
Crazy, huh? So, point is, fire's not new here. We're not going to stop fire from coming here. We have to adapt and learn how to live with it and to survive it. And that's kind of why we're here. So this is what caught my eye when I looked at the Dayton Fire in 1982 and the Woolsey Fire in 2018. They almost started in the same place. Dayton Canyon is just a little bit south of Woolsey. And you can see, I don't have a pointer, but this area in here is pretty much Agoura Hills. So here's Agoura Hills, right? And then I think in 82, probably Westlake Boulevard, Lindero Canyon wasn't too developed, it all burned over, and I think that's kind of what this represents in here now. So the one big difference though is both, occurred in the fall, both wind driven, right? And I think that's my next slide.
Yeah.
That's the commonality, right? But there was either a degree of wind, either the event lasted longer on Woolsey, or it was just a different kind of a wind, and it changed a little bit, because you can see Dayton kind of just came straight south and stopped, right? Whereas Woolsey, it came straight south, and then as the days went on, the wind shifted a little bit, and it grew up to the west. So anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting.
Wow.
So, yeah, Santa Ana winds, that's kind of the common denominator when things go bad. There's 3 things that affect fire behavior. And those are fuel, weather, and topography. So if you're fighting a fuels-driven fire, if you're fighting a topography-driven fire, there's strategies and tactics that you can take. For instance, if a fire is burning uphill, fire likes to burn fast uphill because it's preheating the fuel ahead of it as it goes pretty fast. When it reaches a ridge top and there's no wind behind it, it slows down. So that's a place where dropping retardant, cutting a fire break, right, that's a good place to stop, and it'll slow a lot on its own. So those are good tactics and stuff. When you have winds blowing at 30 or 40 miles an hour, that all kind of goes away. Because now, when a fire reaches the ridge top, then you just have the ember cast that's just kind of turbulent and blowing over, and it can go 1, 3, 5 miles away and start new 100-acre fires in front of it. So
It only takes one ember.
kind of where we're at. So here's just this is a city map of the Woolsey fire. All the little brown or goldenrod, those are all the properties where houses were lost. You can see there's really a concentration here in the Plain Doom area, and then this would be Malibu Branch, or Park, I should say, Malibu West right here. So, I didn't really point it out too much as we were going through a lot of those the fire history, but fires getting into Point Doom is pretty rare. Pretty rare. So as far as how we're looking today, most fire departments, LA County included, they track live fuel moisture. And what they do is they have certain designated vegetation that they use. They go to the same place every couple of weeks. They'll cut a piece off. They put it in a curing, kind of like an oven. Well, they'll weigh it first. They'll put it in this curing oven. They cook out all the moisture. They weigh it again. They see how much it changed, and they can calculate a percentage. By however much weight it lost, they can calculate the percentage of the moisture in it. The moisture, as you can see on this chart, all the way at the top, it tops at 180. So since the water is heavier than the dry material, the percentage of moisture can be higher, right, than 100%. 100% is not maximum, it can be above that because it's a weight ratio. So, on this thing right here, this black curve, that's the average from 1981 to 2019. Blue is last year, and red is where we're at today. So if you look, this is right about where we are right now. So last year at this time, we were at about maybe 62%. This time in August, and 60 is critical. I didn't mention that one, this bottom is critical. So as we went along, we hit critical, bleeped up just a little bit and came back. So we're in pretty bad shape last year. So as of right now, we're at about 80%. So we're a little bit above the average, and we're well above what we were last year. So does that mean we're not going to have any fires? No, not necessarily. It just helps a little bit. We do go into red flag conditions. This is one of the factors they take into account. They look at temperature, they look at relative humidity, they look at the fuel moistures. They put all these different factors in, and they make some calculations. They come up with a thing called a burn index. And they have critical levels that are set on a burn index. It has a number associated with it. You know, it could be 49, it could be 128, but they set a threshold, and if the burn index is, let's say, above 128 in a certain area, that's critical. They call red flag fire danger. And basically when it hits those critical points, it's just basically saying any efforts that you take to control this fire are going to fail. They're not going to work. Okay? And that was the condition we had during the Woolsey fire and pretty much all of these fires. We're in a condition where the flame length and just the rate of spread is going to resist any efforts that you have to control it. So we have to go into a defensive posture, right, and try to protect what's in its way rather than try to stop the fire. Because normally when I try to stop the fire, you know, pinch it off, put it out. So that's where we're at with that. So that's kind of where we are today. Statewide right now, this was as of yesterday, statewide, we burned 43,362 acres, 116 incidents, 0 fatalities, 7 structures damaged or destroyed, and the largest fire is called the Tucker Fire up in Modoc, way up north, 14,000 acres. So it's been kind of a quiet season so far. So we'll see how it goes from there.
Does the season start with the calendar year? When does the season
So
start?
it's not in an exact date. It's normally, hello sir.
Oh yeah, he's coming, I knew him.
Okay.
Yeah.
tied into like rainfall and fuel moistures and things starting to change. So they'll track that, and same with the end of fire season. So they'll kind of track that, and as the fuel moistures are starting to turn and come down, then CAL FIRE would make that decision, and they kind of declare fire season. So, and then the same at the end of the season. You know, normally, traditionally, it was November, and you know we've gone into December. So,
Okay.
but that's kind of how that works. So, and it's very the amount of work that goes on in the background, the corroboration, you know, the conference calls, everything they do to up staff when there's red flags and calling you. I mean, it's a tremendous amount of corroboration and work that goes on. But CAL FIRE primarily drives it. Even though we're covered here by the Los Angeles County Fire Department, the majority of all the mountains around us, with the exception of the city of Malibu, because that's a city, but just outside of the city of Malibu, pretty much all the mountains are what they call state responsibility area, and that means CAL FIRE has responsibility for it. The reason why you don't see CAL FIRE fire stations around here or CAL FIRE fire engines is they pay Los Angeles County to do that for them. So Los Angeles County is called the contract county. So similarly, when we had the Woolsey fire, I don't know how many paid attention, but a CAL FIRE incident command team came in and took over the fire. When it exceeds the capabilities of the local fire department, then a CAL FIRE team comes in, and these are people that are all trained in their positions to run these teams. So. Okay, preparation. When I was a new firefighter, so you have to add a little bit of humor to all your presentations, right? So when I was a new firefighter, I bought a house, newly married, bought a fixer-upper house. My captain used to paint houses. Back before I was a firefighter, all firefighters had second jobs. And so I was telling him I was going to paint my house, and he was grilling me. He could be all kind of gruff and grumbly. And he said, "Hey, you know what the 4 P's of painting are, right?" And I give him my best guess, and I said, "Well, yeah, patching, preparation, priming, and painting." And he goes, "No, you dummy, it's preparation, 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 and painting. Because it doesn't matter what paint you buy, how good a quality, if you don't prepare, it's not going to come out." So, that's why it's important to prepare. So, kind of going back to our beginning, each individual has the greatest influence on improving their personal survivability profile, as well as that of their homes and property, through proper preparation and timely evacuation. So that's kind of what we're going to cover now, is our personal preparation and getting ready to do that. We doing okay on time?
Yeah, oh yeah, you've got
Okay.
at least 20 minutes.
Okay.
But we gave
Okay.
extra time for it.
Okay, perfect. So on personal preparation, we're going to talk a little bit about situational awareness, maybe a new term to some people, maybe not. And then Ready, Set, Go. Ready, Set, Go is a nationally recognized program. I have pamphlets here that you're welcome to take. It's all about preparing. It's endorsed and by the LA County Fire Department and the city as well. So it helps you set up an evacuation plan. It talks about the defensible space around your house, and a term called hardening your home, and then finally what to do when it's time to take action. So situational awareness is kind of a military term. There's a plan that's made, but the plan may not always work, so you have to always be taking in information around you, gathering information and see what's going on and see if the plan still works. And stuff like that. So, here's an example of maybe not such good situational awareness. Right? So you want to gather information, you want to understand the information, you want to think ahead.
Somebody got free lunch.
Right? So, here's an example of situational awareness. It's Tuesday night, you turn on the news, and the newscaster says, on Thursday, we're going to go into red flag fire conditions. Santa Ana winds are coming. That's what's happening. And it's Tuesday, so you have 2 days to think about it, right? So, kind of using this situational awareness tool or this analysis, kind of the companion to that is like what I call a trigger point. It triggers some kind of action, okay? Something is happening here. Santa Ana winds, do they affect me here in Malibu? Yeah, they sure can, right? So this is already kind of telling me I need to be aware a little bit, right? It's kind of triggering an action, my awareness. Is my evacuation plan ready to go? Right? Do I know what I'm going to do? So that's kind of your first trigger point of maybe things going on, and just a situational awareness tool that instead of just looking at it and going, yeah, whatever, and walk away, it should just kind of trigger something in your mind that, yeah, things are happening. So here's another one. Maybe you want to, instead of coming home at night with the gas light on and thinking, I'll stop and get gas on the morning on my way to work, maybe you want to park that car every night with gas in it and ready to go, because you don't know what's going to happen. So that's just kind of applying that situational awareness and something you can do. Are any wives offended by this? I'm sorry. My wife does this to me. I ran out of gas in my own truck one time after she drove it. Okay, another situational awareness tool. Has anybody heard of Pulse Point? Pulse Point? Okay, I have it on my phone. You can put it on your personal smart devices. I have a little handout. It can be kind of cumbersome because it can be giving you beeps all the time. But I have a handout where you can drill it down, and the only time it's going to go off is when there's a vegetation fire in either Marina del Rey, West Hollywood, Santa Monica Mountains. That's pretty much, or Universal Studios, right? That's pretty much, so pretty much they're always going to be in the Santa Monica Mountains / Malibu area, right? So you can drill it down. That's the only time you're going to get a notification on this thing if you set it up the way I show you. So that's another situation tool. So on Tuesday night, they told me it was going to be a red flag condition. I already kind of made sure my plan was ready to go. Now it's Thursday, and I have Pulse Point, and I get an alert that there's a fire. This thing will tell me, it tells me where it is, right? Vegetation fire on Mulholland Highway. Okay, and then you can even push on it again, and it'll give you a map of where it is. So now it's kind of some more situational awareness. I know the winds are blowing. I know there's a vegetation fire that's been dispatched on Mulholland Highway. What's maybe the next thing I do? If I go outside and I start seeing that, even if it's light smoke, if I just see anything, or if I look up and I see smoke blowing overhead, if smoke's blowing over my head, which way is the wind coming, which way is the fire coming? It's coming toward me, right? So, by using these situational awareness tools and just kind of paying attention to things that are going on around you and using some of the tools that are available, you can be ahead of the curve. You don't have to wait for the City of Malibu to tell you to go, or the LA County Fire Department to tell you to go. If you set kind of some limits for yourself where you feel comfortable, and these couple of little trigger points have come, then you can say, you know what, I'm going to go. I'm just going to go. I've done everything I can in my house. I have all my stuff. I'm going to go. And we'll talk a little bit more about Mr. Craig Lapsley and what's going on in Australia, because that kind of plays into this as well. Okay, so all these things happen, so it's time for action. So ready, set, go. I have the programs there. We'll go through this kind of fast because I'm sure there's questions.
Yeah.
Okay, defensible space is this concept, is you can't have brush growing too close to your house, right? If you live on property where you're directly adjacent to the brush, you need at least 100 feet of clearance, okay? At least 100 feet. In a perfect world, you have no vegetation within the first 5 feet of your house, okay? Because even your ornamental vegetation can burn under the right conditions, or if it's not well maintained, or if there's bark or mulch under that all receptive fuel for embers, okay? And that's how a lot of houses burn in Malibu Park, and a lot of houses in Point Dume. They weren't near the wildfire, but it was embers that blew, and once one house catches on fire, and the house next door has receptive fuel in it, guess what? That one's going to catch on fire too, and it's gone from a wildfire to an urban fire, and it's just burning houses, okay? So, again, I'll go through this, not by PowerPoint, but all the information I'm referring to, I will send you, it's all available PDF, so you can email it out to everybody. I do have some of the stuff here available. So what we look at is this, and this applies not just to people that live on land or abut to the urban interface. This is anybody, like the folks in Point Dume and the folks in Malibu Park and Malibu West. If you look on here, we talk about the continuity of fuel. If you have all these bushes growing together, I always say something like that's maybe the size of a Greyhound bus. That's a lot of fuel to burn if it catches on fire, right? You can put up a lot of embers, and radiant heat can maybe catch your house on fire. But if you turn that Greyhound bus into a couple of Volkswagen Bugs with 20 feet of clearance in between them, they're each going to burn individually and kind of go out, and maybe it's not going to be as bad. So that's fuel continuity. The other thing we talk about is a fuel ladder. Fire can come across the ground, catches the bush on fire, the bush catches the small tree on fire, small tree catches the big tree on fire, because there's just a continuous flow of fuel right there, okay? If you break up that continuity a little bit, you get the tree limbed up off the ground. If you drive around some of these areas where they burn, maybe you have, there's just mass destruction and devastation, there's no house, but some of the trees are still standing, right? They didn't burn. So when you think about trees, and even your house and stuff like that catching on fire, think about trying to start a fire in your fireplace or when you're out camping. You can't throw logs on the fire, throw a match on it, and walk away, right? You need kindling. You might take newspaper and crumble it up and split little slivers off the log. That's called the kindling. That'll get going. That generates enough heat, and then it gets the main logs going. So this is kind of the same principle. One big tree by itself, probably not going to catch on fire. Your house by itself, unless embers get in through vents or something like that, embers are going to bounce off of it. But if it finds a way into somewhere, or it gets your vegetation burning next to your house, that's that kindling. And once that gets going, then it may find other ways in. So that's kind of the concept of that. But this applies to everybody. The house on the left, do we see any houses like that in Malibu at all? Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely, right? And it's beautiful, it's serene, people have their privacy, I get all that. But the one on the right would be better. And so the thing we struggle with is kind of that balance, right? We don't want to take everything out, right? We don't want to do that. So there's kind of a balance, just maintaining it, breaking up the continuity a little bit. Okay, so the next thing is ember awareness, and this applies to everybody. And we're doing a new thing now. There's a lot of folks here in Malibu, arson watch folks, CERT folks, myself, other people have gone to a class. There's one happening the next 2 days, and it's doing home inspections, and evaluations to evaluate the ignitability of your house, the probability of ignitability of your house. And it's just helping you look at things like covering your attic vents, either attic vents or foundation vents. It's maybe there's just big gaps in your construction that caulking can go over, or some kind of screen. Maybe it's vegetation that you could do without and you can get it away from your house. Maybe it's tree limbs that are literally laying on top of your roof. So they can just give you recommendations on stuff like that. The difficult part with this is if you live in an area where houses are kind of close to one another and you get yours all nice and square and dialed in, and the one next door doesn't, right? There's still a little bit of, I mean, you're doing a lot better, but a house burns a lot longer and a lot hotter than a big stand of brush is going to burn. So it takes everybody working together. This ember checklist, I have plenty of them. You're welcome to take those, and it kind of goes through the steps. Some of it can be expensive if you still have a wood roof. I don't think anybody does. You know, it'd be expensive to replace a roof. They recommend dual pane windows, one of the panes being tempered because it takes like 3 times as much heat. So all that stuff can be expensive. It's not going to all happen overnight. If those are things that you want to work toward, you can do little by little. But some of it, I bought this 20-foot roll of quick mesh myself at Lowe's for about 24 bucks. And I'm going to cut some pieces to go over my attic vents. I have the kind of half moon shaped ones that stick out. And it's 1/4 inch mesh right now. So I'm going to put this 1/8 inch over that, and that breaks up any embers or brands that can be going into your attic. Okay? So that's just one kind of quick and easy fix you can do. Okay, creating your own plan and practicing it. I'll keep going, we'll talk a little bit more. So the big thing is, and on the situational awareness we talked about, is the city, I guarantee you, the city wants to let people know as soon as they can when it's time to go. Part of my job is I listen to that pulse point. I look at it immediately when it goes off. If there's something going on in Topanga, I turn on my little radio. I'm listening, I'm monitoring, and I can tell them, hey, yeah, this fire's going on. It's not that big of a deal, it's fine, you know, so they can kind of ramp down. But again, if it's going to be a red flag day and it's, you know, it's windy and everything's going on, they want to act fast, they want people to get out, okay? But you have to have a plan. So I can tell you right now, on the evacuation side of things, I know there's horror stories about PCH gridlock. In reality, if you can get out of your canyon or off your hill and ahead of the fire, behind the fire, whatever, and you're safe, you may not be comfortable, you may be sitting in traffic for 4 or 6 hours, but you're safe and you're alive. Okay? There's no way the city can guarantee they're going to have you at your room at the Holiday Inn Express in Santa Monica in 45 minutes. That's not going to happen. Okay? So we don't wanna do that. So if we leave early, if we practice our situational awareness, we've gotta reach that point. You know what? I know there's a red flag, I know there's a fire in Topanga, I see a little bit of smoke, that's it, I'm done, I'm out of here, I'm leaving. Okay? And then you can get ahead of all this stuff. Okay, the next big topic here in Malibu right now, you hear over and over and over, there was no fire trucks here, there's no fire trucks here. We stayed. There's been some neighborhoods that had some great success. Malibu West had great success. There's other communities, neighborhoods now that want to mirror that and copy that. So there's a lot of risk involved in that, and there's a liability from the fire department, from the city to assist in that, to encourage that. We're not trying to stop it, you know, but we can't encourage it or help it either. So going back to Craig Lapsley in Australia, in the late 90s, early 2000s, I told you they have similar fire problems to us. They don't have as robust a fire service. It's all pretty much community volunteers. So when they get these fires, it's all volunteers anyway. They got to a point, they said, hey people, we cannot put these fires out by ourselves. We can't do it. So they encouraged people to create defensible space, harden their homes, have an evacuation plan, but they basically said, if you can stay and help, we want you to stay and help because we can't do it all. So they were very successful with that for a while. So they were so successful, in fact, that fire chiefs here in the United States saw what was going on and paid attention to that. And they said, you know what, we should start doing this too. And so they did. They had this whole program, and it was called Leave Early or Stay and Defend. Okay? I have acronyms, Liason, right? So they made a pamphlet similar to this, and it said stay early or leave and defend, and if you turn to a certain page, it would tell you what to do to try and stay and defend your home. We had these pamphlets in my fire station when I worked in Ventura County 2008. February of 2009 in Australia, they had 400 plus individual fires that burned up over 1 million acres, killed 180 people, burned up 3,500 buildings, including 2,000 homes. Well, guess what happened to their leave early or stay and defend? Went away, right?
Went away.
And in the panic, the fire chiefs here in California were saying, absolutely not are we doing that. So these pamphlets that showed up in my fire station mysteriously disappeared one day, and guess what was born out of that? Ready, set, go. Okay? Ready, set, go. So that's that. So this Craig Lapsley, he was actually here in Malibu. He was helping do some after-action investigations of the whole fire and everything that was going on. And he came and visited us. So he kind of got put in charge of this agency to change what was going on after this Black Saturday, after this bad fire. They realized things had to change. So that's been 10 years ago now. But they've had a whole cultural shift. And for them, like, evacuating doesn't take on that urgency or that end-all thing, because it happens kind of fairly regularly. So the people that kind of maintain their situational awareness, they know it's a red flag day, they know there's things going on, they see some smoke in the distance and they go, let's go into town and go to the mall today. Or let's go to the beach or the lake or whatever. They seal up their house, close the windows, turn off the gas, do what they need to do. They've got their defensible space, and it's just kind of like, all right, let's just go. And at the end of the day, if the fire's out, they come home, and if it escalates, it gets worse, then they weren't there. So that's a whole paradigm or cultural shift. I don't know that we could ever get there, but it's just a whole different way of looking at things and doing things. So, in a nutshell, I'm sorry I yapped too much.
No, it's good.
I
It's time,
always,
we
worry
probably
about-
have some questions.
and I want to make sure that you have the ability to do that. Again, I have these in hard copy here if you want them. My card is here. I have the Ready, Set, Go pamphlets. I urge you guys to take them and look at them. I can send you links if you want more, if you want to share them with people. I haven't, they'll be in PDF format. I have some example evacuation checklists, like what to take and do if I have to leave in 5 minutes, what to take and do if I have 30 minutes, what to take and do if I have an hour or two, right? So that list is gonna get bigger. Your priorities change with time, right?
Right.
What else do I have in there? I have kind of step-by-step instructions on how you can set up pulse point on your phone, so that you're only going to get those alerts when there's a vegetation fire here, basically in this geographical area, because Marina del Rey, Most Hollywood won't have them. So you won't hear them that often. But again, situational awareness is key. Okay, questions?